We'll call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Citizens' comments. Any citizens wishing to speak? Any citizens wishing to speak? Any citizens wishing to speak? Seeing and hearing none, we will move on. Reports from the chairman. Couple of things. We did have the chief deputy coming in tonight to talk about overtime, which has been a constant source of annoyance for me for 16 or 18 years, however long I've been doing this. And not that I want them to come in to get anything fixed or we have a crystal ball. I just wanted us to discuss things, look over the numbers, do like a 5-year analysis of what was budgeted and what was spent, and listen to what they're doing and maybe give them some of our input if we have it. So make note of that. That'll be on the next finance agenda. Also, the next finance agenda, speaking of which, we, part of our staff is gonna be taking a holiday or something, or going away or doing something. Okay, whatever. So we need to move the meeting. I was thinking about moving it to a Tuesday, since a lot of us do Tuesday stuff anyway. Tuesday at 6 that week instead of Thursday.
That would be February 11th.
Okay, so I'm hoping that works for everybody. And if you guys have, to finish up my comments, which I don't usually make comments, by the way. If anybody has anything that they're curious about and want information on going into this year, now would be a good time to do it. Because after the last election, I had, packed this committee with all different things, and I hope that we would touch a lot of information and get some good ideas. And right now we're in a lull, which is fine. It's the time of year. There's not a lot going on. But that being said, if anybody has any questions or ideas that we want to talk about, certainly get in touch with me and I'll get it on the agenda, and, we'll have a little bit of a discussion. So that being said, any reports from the committee? Supervisor Gearson, you have the
Mr.
floor.
Chairman, I'm available on the 11th. So
Okay.
if you probably should pull the committee, but you mentioned things that we may want to do, and I've mentioned multiple times that I'm looking at a resolution on addressing fraud. So I discussed it informally, and I sent a request back in May, and I said my hope was we could have something in Q1 that would address policy relative to fraud. For example, the Government Finance Officers Association has best practices relative to addressing certain aspects of fraud and treasury management, that kind of thing. So that's something I hope to get. I asked it be reviewed by the administration, and then once the thing gets reviewed, I'd like to bring it to committee too.
That's fine. Just let me know where you're at with it.
I'll, when it's ready, I'll loop you in, and then we'll put it on the docket.
Okay,
And that's what I wanted to say, so I yield.
okay. Any other committee members? All right, seeing none, moving on. Approval of the minutes, joint finance meeting with JLEC and regular finance meeting on November 14th.
Move the approval of November 14 minutes.
Vice Chair Gashke to approve the minutes, seconded by Supervisor Geertsen.
Second.
Any questions or comments on those minutes? Seeing none, all those approval?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. CAVA third quarter report, Nicole?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to speak with the committee today. You have me today because Brock is out of town. So I figured I'd give a little bit more of a CAVA update today. Of course, I'm glad to give an update as well on our loan portfolio. But if there's any specific questions on that, I'm glad to relay those to Brock and get back to you next week. So first of all, just wanted to thank all of you for your support in the 2025 budget. Obviously, we can't do what we do when it comes to economic development without the support of the county. So thank you for that. And thank you also for replenishing the high impact fund. As you know from hearing from Brock, we've closed a lot of deals in just the last year using that high impact fund. It's been really critical to attracting Smurfit Westrock here, Concept Labs, to Pleasant Prairie. And then also we have another company that we've approved a high impact, forgivable loan to that still is confidential, but we're hoping to announce in the next month or so. They're in a really critical industry, that I think you all will be really excited about when you hear who the company is and what they're doing. So beyond that, as far as the outstanding loan portfolio is concerned, we don't have any delinquent payments right now. So everybody's in good standing. We have not made any new loans in the last 3 to 6 months. I don't know the last time Brock was here because I think the last meeting maybe was canceled. But since the last meeting, we haven't made any new loans. But during that time frame, we do have, I think, 2 to 3 different potential borrowers that we've been working with, one that actually has an application in. So we're hopeful at our next finance committee meeting in February that we'll be able to approve that loan and move forward with that. It's a local company that's really growing very rapidly. So really excited to help support their growth from that standpoint. I would say we also are doing a lot really to drum up interest when it comes to doing new loans. So we're doing a lot of business retention visits. That's actually where the current loan that we're working on the application for came from. I had gone out to visit that company, found out they had some financial needs, and we're able to support them on that. And then we're also doing a lot of visits with the banking community. So we continue to meet with their commercial lenders, help them understand the program, kind of refresh the idea of what we're doing. From the standpoint of the pipeline that we're working on, I would say I've been really impressed, even just over the last week. I think I've gotten 3 new prospects that have come directly to me. We still have a really strong pipeline of companies that are in Northern Illinois, so either Chicago or north of that, including one that called me today that's about to make an offer on a building. That's really excited to be here. They're all seeing the benefit of just kind of the business climate here, obviously the business friendliness of our communities, and then we're able to do a lot to help them. The woman I talked to today, she actually said, "Oh my gosh, I tried to get this kind of help in this community in Illinois. They didn't want to do anything for me. I can't believe what all you're doing just right now." So I think they really see the value of engaging with us from that standpoint. We actually do have some good prospects too for some of the spec industrial buildings that you're seeing on I-94. We've had some pretty high vacancy rates over the last year because a lot of those were done and then the economy slowed down a little bit. So it's really good. We're seeing a lot of good manufacturing and warehousing prospects for some of those existing new buildings as well. And then I just did want to touch on a couple of other kind of random pieces that are going on at CABA. So one, I think you all are aware that we launched a housing task force in partnership with the county. So we've been working very closely with Andy Bueller in the planning department and then Savannah Meyer at UW Extension on that. We have over 50 people that have agreed to participate in that, and that's all volunteers. So you've got home builders, developers, financial institutions, nonprofits, our large employers, our municipalities, everybody's involved in it. So we had our kickoff in November and we're breaking into work groups, and those meetings will happen next week and the week after. So that'll be the first meeting of those. We at CABA are running a financial tools group. So really what that's intended to do is to help us come up with ideas of how we might be able to deploy some of our CABA RLF funds to support some of the housing shortage and help alleviate some of that. So we're really excited about that and really excited about the partnership with the county on that. We do have a couple events coming up. We've got our business lunch next week. That actually will be an infrastructure update. So we do have Greg Bolt from the Division of Highways. He will be presenting on what's going on with county highway infrastructure development. We've got ATC, We Energies, and a couple others that will present there. Our Ovation Awards are coming up. And then our annual meeting, that will be on March 12th. And we're bringing in Matt Kirchner. He is a really great thought leader on the topic of AI. I saw him speak at a state economic development conference, and we talk a lot about AI. I don't really get it, right? I think we're all trying to think of like, how does this apply to me? And so he actually will go through and say like, here's the 20 things
That
you can do
scares
right
me.
now.
Just so you know.
I think it scares all
I'm
of
gonna
us,
throw
right?
it on the record. Yeah, not a fan.
That's okay.
All
Yeah,
right, continue.
he's fair enough. But yeah, so he'll give
Yeah,
it.
these two love it, but I
Hey,
mean,
these
They can
three,
probably teach
okay,
them
3. Yeah, since you're just graduating, yeah.
that. Four.
Oh, 4.
So yeah, it should be a good program from that standpoint. So hope you can join us for that. And then just the last thing I wanted to touch on, we continue to invest in our Life Balanced initiative. So as you all know, that's our talent attraction resource. We did receive a grant from WEDC last year to help with that. So we just uploaded a new video that we did that features a young woman who lives and works in Pleasant Prairie. So it kind of shows kind of her day-to-day of what she's doing in the local community. She works at Uline. And then we also started a new section of the website called Life Balance Locals. And right now I think we have like 10 to 15 different people. We're hoping to expand that to even more people that live here locally. They could be boomerangs, so they maybe grew up here, moved away and came back. They may have lived here for a very long time, maybe farther along in their careers or really focused on family, just so that anyone who's going to this website, they can kind of see someone who's like them, right? And maybe resonate with them. And then we also do have the opportunity for people to connect directly with those life balance locals. So they're kind of like advocates for the local community. So we're really excited about that. So we can continue to build out that website, and we'll be going for another WEDC grant this year so we can do some additional photography and videography for that. So it's kind of the quick overview of what we've been doing, but I'm glad to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Okay, I have some.
Good.
I was last in the room. I'll start. I really want to commend you on the job you're doing. You're very smart, knowledgeable, and every time I hear from you, I write notes, which is not normal. So I also would like to, would you be interested in coming back in February and talking to this committee about the housing thing that you guys are putting together with the county? I'd like to hear about that, not that, you know, I mean, I'm just curious. I don't know about if the committee's curious, but I'd like to know where our housing initiatives are going, more or less what your target is. Not that you're gonna have concrete information, but I want to see kind of what you're looking to do, what you're kind of trying to accomplish, any numbers you might have. I find that interesting with a background in real estate, you know, and an interest in the county and jobs and housing. I think that's an important thing. So if you would come back and give us an update on how your breakout sessions go and what these committees are, and just give us a little information, I'd appreciate it.
Sounds great. I would love to do that. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
The next thing is we talked about, I don't know if you didn't want to mention a name that's already been mentioned, but the pharmaceutical company that I've seen on football games and the commercials.
The Olympics.
That's, yeah, the Olympic, I mean, it's been rumored for a long time, so, okay, that's all right.
I would love to talk about that briefly if you'd like.
Sure.
Yeah, so
sure.
that's public. So we've been working with Eli Lilly and Company since back in April, when they originally had expressed the intent to purchase the Nexus Pharmaceuticals building in Pleasant Prairie. So at that time, you know, we obviously had some loans with Nexus Pharmaceuticals. We also had a high impact loan with Nexus Pharmaceuticals. So Nexus came to us and said, hey, we're looking at selling, but we still created all these jobs. So basically the conversation there was that Nexus was going to pay off their loans because obviously that was going to happen when they closed the deal. But we actually do have an agreement still with them to retain the jobs. So we're doing that through them and Eli Lilly because the jobs are obviously still there. The company's still growing. So during the last 6 or so months, we've been working very closely with Lilly, who's really focused on getting integrated into the community. So we helped them with their global day of service. They went out to the Boys and Girls Club and did a bunch of work out there and kind of helped them out. And then their head of manufacturing for all of the entire world, he actually came and spoke to students at Lakeview Technology Academy, which was so cool. So this guy, I mean, he's like number 2 at all of the Eli Lilly, which is a Fortune 150 company. I mean, that's what he chose to do on one of the days that he was here visiting. So they really are getting integrated. We're kind of helping them with a plan of how to get involved in the community beyond that. And then during that time frame, what I couldn't talk about was all of the site selection work that was happening and then looking at that expansion. So basically they see the opportunity here. There's a captive workforce, and think of how many people that live here work at Abbott Labs and work at AbbVie. Think of what a great talent pipeline we have here. And then they've seen how much the community has embraced them. And so they've decided to invest $3 billion with a B dollars in Pleasant Prairie and in Bristol to expand their facility there. So they're going to build a state-of-the-art brand new facility. They'll be manufacturing the GLP drugs. So those are the diabetes drugs and then the weight loss drugs. And I think the possibilities are limitless with this company. They're a magnet for other companies in that industry. So we at CABA are trying to learn as much as possible about that industry. Our higher ed partners, KUSD, we already took them on a tour of the new Lakeview Technology Academy building. I think this is just the beginning of something that's going to be truly remarkable. I think this is the biggest project in Kenosha County history, and they're just an incredible company. So really excited to have them here.
Sounds like it. And one of the notes I took, ironically, when you bring it up, is workforce, jobs, creation, how we're working with the schools. So that's another thing that I'm not going to spring on anybody just yet, but now it's tickling the back of my mind. So I want to know where we are with that, because when these big companies come in, where do they tap in? I've heard we haven't had enough workers. We haven't had enough skilled workers. We haven't had enough workers going in certain pinpoint things, in the past. So I'm just curious at how that, where we are now with that. But
Yeah,
I mean, we don't need to go into it now, but that's something that I want to look at too.
definitely. And that's something that I'm glad to talk a lot more extensively about, because that is one of our key focus areas. So I think CABA is really unique as an economic development organization in that it's not just about the jobs and capital investment. That's important, but it's really about what are the challenges and opportunities for our employers. And so that's how we really got into the talent development space. Brooke Infusina are on our team. That's mainly what she does all day, every day. We're really unique from that standpoint. And that's why we're getting into housing, because we're hearing from our employers, there's nowhere for our employees to live. So I would have never thought that's what I'd be doing. But I love it. It's really great. And
And
that
I
we have
thought
the
that
ability
too.
to
I'm
do
like,
that,
what is he
right?
talking to us about
Yeah.
that too? You know, but
Exactly.
hey, you know, I'm all for it. If we could talk about creating jobs and where we're gonna get the people to work those jobs and where they're gonna live, and I mean, it wraps it all up with a bow. I mean, I'm okay with that. I'll have those discussions all day. Like you, I like to talk, so, that's good. And I just wanna commend you and let the committee know that I have been forever in support of this high impact fund and getting these guys money to bring jobs into our community. I think that is just a very, very important and key piece of what we do behind the scenes here at Kenosha County. We can look at the budget being our really main job, which it is, but the strength of our community is another thing that we all need to think about. So I love these talks and we should do more of them.
Sounds great. Thank you.
But thank you very much. Does anybody, now that I hogged all that time, does anybody else on the committee have anything?
So,
Supervisor Kirby, you have the floor.
in regards to the housing task force, is there focus on affordable housing options? Cause I know there's people that want to live here and work here and they can't afford it.
Right.
Just because it is so pricey. We need more housing, obviously, and I know that'll help drive costs down, but are we looking at, smaller apartment buildings if need be?
You're exactly right on in what we're trying to tackle here. So really what it comes down to is having a match between the types of jobs that we have and the wages that we pay and the type of housing opportunities that we have here. So Andy Bueller, actually, who's part of the county team, he coined the term housing for all. So we're not necessarily focusing on mansions, but that's something we're hearing too, that doctors aren't able to find the type of housing that they're looking for here. But really it's about looking at the types of jobs we have here. What are the wages and how can we make housing more attainable, I would say, for those people. And that comes down to a lot of different things. So we're looking at financial tools we can develop to help offset costs, whether that's helping to support infrastructure development, low interest loans. We're also looking at planning, zoning, and design standards. So Andy's running that committee. And a lot of that comes down to if you're able to have maybe a little bit smaller lots, you don't have to have quite as expensive of materials that you're using. A lot of that helps to reduce the cost. Same with apartments, if you can have maybe an 800 square foot apartment instead of 1,000 square foot apartment, obviously that reduced costs. And then we're also talking about marketing as well. So Savannah from Extension's running that. It's a two-pronged approach. That's looking at marketing to developers and home builders, just to help them understand the value proposition here, because we're creating all these jobs, so we need the housing, but then also educating people about the need for more housing, because there's a lot of that not in my backyard kind of mentality, particularly at the local level, that can happen, right? So it's helping people understand, like, these are nurses, these are people who are bank tellers, they're teachers, they're EMTs, and they need a place to live, right? So yeah, it's a great point. It's exactly what we're thinking about.
Anybody else on the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all. Have a good night.
You too. Port Council, a resolution to approve leave of absence for Jennifer Mack to hold the office of Register of Deeds. Ashley.
All right, I'm Ashley Letterman. I'm the Assistant Director of Human Resources. I'm actually presenting on behalf of Corporation Counsel. So before you this evening is a resolution to approve the leave of absence for Jennifer Mack to hold the office of Register of Deeds. Ms. Mack has requested this leave of absence to be granted for the period of time that she holds the office of Register of Deeds. Furthermore, Ms. Mack understands that she would not be returning to her former position of Chief Deputy Registrar of Deeds, but rather she would be placed in the first vacancy in the Register of Deeds office or another Kenosha County department for which she would be otherwise qualified for. I spoke with the Register of Deeds this afternoon and she is unfortunately not able to be here this evening. at tonight's meeting, but she will be at Tuesday's county board meeting. If you have any questions, you can also reach her offline as well, if you have any other questions.
Supervisor Gearston, you have the floor.
Chairman, I move approval of the resolution.
It's been moved by Supervisor Gearston, seconded by Supervisor Kirby. Questions or comments on that committee? Okay, I have one. In understanding this and having a discussion with Patty about it, I was curious at first how she was gonna get her job back, which now you're telling me she's not. Or any job anywhere. And now I understand how that works because she's just putting her name in line in any vacancy. So that was gonna be my question, is how can we save a spot, any spot, and create a spot for somebody down the road? And we really can't. So this is how that works. She just gets in line and takes the first vacancy that opens. Okay, cool. Any other questions or comments? Supervisor or Vice Chair Gashby.
Just more of a comment or clarification. This is fairly standard. We've done this for other elected officials, including our most recent sheriff and others. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, I heard that it was rather common too, but I wasn't party to this very much happening. And I also I just didn't think it through about where she was coming back to. So that to me was what made that curious, but this explains it all. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Look like you're getting comfortable there.
I am.
County Executive, a resolution to approve the reappointment of Thomas Santarelli to serve as a member of the Civil Service Committee.
Yes. The county executive's office is seeking the reappointment of Thomas Santarelli to the Civil Service Commission. Mr. Santarelli has served many years on the commission and would like to continue to serve. The resolution was approved unanimously by the Judiciary and Law Enforcement Committee last week on January 7th. Mr. Santarelli is here this evening if you have any questions for him.
The only questions I have, whether he would be here or not, is how his attendance was, the meetings, what he likes about the committee, how he thinks he adds flavor to it, anything he wants to say. So the floor is yours.
I do not know what my attendance record is, but I'm sure I was at, if not all of them, I may have missed one.
Okay.
For work, sometimes that gets in the way. But no, I think I can help the committee when we add a little different perspective. I'm still working. Most of the other folks on the committee are not working anymore. And it's just nice to be able to try to help the community with the hiring of these deputies.
Supervisor Nudo.
I'll make a motion to approve.
It's been moved by Supervisor Nudo to approve, seconded by Supervisor Gearston. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much for taking the time to come down here. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for that.
All right. Number 9, Sheriff Civil Service Ordinance Amendment.
Yes, before you is a resolution seeking amendments to the civil service ordinance. There are a couple items here tonight, a few housekeeping items and then one significant amendment. The first one we'll start off with is under 3C8 eligibility. In this amendment, we want to be clear and add that an internal applicant or former Kenosha County employee seeking reemployment is otherwise eligible for under Kenosha County hiring and promotion procedures. The goal here is to make it clear that we have a procedure in the employee handbook that would apply to current and former Kenosha County employees. So if someone is no longer eligible to be employed with Kenosha County, it's right there in the civil service ordinance, and there's no questions with that.
Okay.
Okay. The next item you'll see is under D, examinations. This is language we would like to remove from the procedure. The multiple interview assessment is a tool that we've been utilizing for many years here at Kenosha County. It goes hand in hand with the examination that we've also been using with with the test company. Both products are with a company called PCI, or Police Consultants Incorporated. The examination is proctored in person through that company. Unfortunately, it's been difficult to get agreement with that organization for our staff to proctor the examination. We can't offer the examination online, which creates some logistics problems with scheduling, getting folks, maybe if they're out-of-state candidates, coming in person here to take the test. So we've determined that there's another examination that we want to use, one that many other agencies are using. If we utilize that test, PCI does not want us to use the multiple interview assessment. So we are looking for better efficiency in our process, a test that can continue to provide that quality assessment. It can be proctored by us in Human Resources. It can be proctored online for a candidate that's either out of state or has military obligations. It overall would just improve our efficiency. So here we are today requesting to eliminate that multiple interview assessment from the ordinance. That would allow us to use the other examination because PCI does not want the two products being used separately.
I'm gonna go back to them all, so you might as well
Okay.
just finish.
All right, the next change is the addition of Act 82. Wisconsin Act 82 accomplished a few things here. One being better cooperation between law enforcement agencies about records of law enforcement officers, ensuring that someone who was problematic in one agency doesn't get moved to another agency without them being aware. Another aspect of Act 82 specifically includes domestic violence offenses as disqualifying criteria for a law enforcement applicant. We're requesting to add language to the ordinance to be clear that candidates would be ineligible for certification under the Law Enforcement Standards Board for reasons covered under these statutes.
I have to go back to that one.
Okay.
That's clear as bell.
The final change that we're requesting, currently the ordinance requires us to send written notice to disqualified candidates by certified US mail. This is a tedious process. There's an expense related to it, and it's not as fast as our candidates would like. With this day and age, with email and text message, our candidates are wanting communication much faster. And so that's why we are putting in that request. These amendments have been endorsed by the Civil Service Commission, by the Sheriff's Office. In addition, the resolution was approved unanimously by the Judiciary and Law Enforcement Committee last week.
It's clear as bell too. All right, committee, any questions on any of those? Supervisor Gearson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So going back to that change, the PCI, can we go back to that, please, on the screen? This PCI, we've been using them for decades, haven't
Yes.
we? I mean, does it like go back to the 80s or,
Yes.
or even before that? And who's the name of that person that had that company?
Sir Dave Christensen.
No, the guy I'm thinking of was before that. So these tests, they've evolved over the decades, and it's so critically important that we do a good job of this. I mean, when you see municipalities that have really good functioning justice systems with the policing versus ones that don't, they've done a good job. When we went through and decided to flip to the other test, it's still PCI, right?
Yes.
And was there like a comparison on how good a predictor the old test is compared to the new test? Was there some evaluation that said this is still a good process for us to screen candidates for this type of a job?
Let me be clear. When you say the new test, meaning like the one that we want to move to?
Right.
Oh, that is not with PCI. That is with another
Okay,
organization.
so we're going to it. So we're going to a different company.
Correct.
So, and then if we go to them, PCI didn't want to do this MIA
Right.
anymore. That's what, yeah. So, Was there when we were looking at these, is there data that shows that this screening tool works at least as good, if not better, than the one we're leaving?
Yes, so we did do a thorough analysis of multiple examination options that are used in the state of Wisconsin and outside of the state of Wisconsin. The one that seemed to really always rise to the top, especially in the state of Wisconsin, was the one that we are hoping to move to, and that's iOS Solutions.
iOS?
iOS Solutions, yes, IO Solutions, I think it is, IO Solutions. They are a well-respected organization in the public safety written test arena. And so they offer an assessment tool that has been vetted by the sheriff's office, human resources, and that's the assessment that we plan to use. And at last week's meeting with the Judiciary and Law Enforcement Committee, Supervisor Morrissey was familiar with iOS Solutions product as well, and also gave his kind of 2 thumbs up for that product.
So do these, I mean, when we're looking at this test and you look at how many governments use them, is there data on how solid the workforce is of a police department that uses this type of a test compared to other testing systems, other tests that are given? Is that data that you can see when you're making a decision to pick this kind of a screening tool?
I mean, they gave us a lot of data. I think the most important part of any type of selection tool, though, is doing what, forget the name of it, sorry.
That's okay.
It's an assessment basically where we test our current workforce and we give a sample of the test to our current workforce. And based on how they answer the examination, it's a validation process. That's what it's called. Validation process. It validates basically how the employees in our community would appropriately respond to those questions. And so then when we have applicants who are testing, they have data that is specific to Kenosha County to ensure that it's a valid data, valid test. And so they will then adjust the scoring based on the data that our workforce has tested with.
I yield.
Any other committee members?
Yes.
Supervisor Kirby, you have the floor.
So in terms of the test, what is offered by between PCI and iOS? Is it essentially we're testing for the same things under both companies? Are there certain tests that will no longer apply under iOS? I just want to get an idea of the differences between the 2 testing solutions.
Yeah, so the 2 testing solutions are similar, but yet different. I think the biggest change with this solution through iOS Solutions is that the efficiencies that can come from it, but they are very similar assessment tools.
So are they testing for the same things?
Not identical because they're different products,
Okay.
but essentially, yes, they're talking about, there's still the written components of it, the reading comprehension components, there's the mathematical components of it, there's judgment, there's questions designed about integrity and ethics, so.
Okay, and then my other question, also related to the testing, when we do proctor an exam that is online, how do we ensure that individual that we have taken the test is actually the one taking the test?
Sure, so it's been a longstanding practice and that will continue, that we always have a deputy that is there at check-in that we request and require an identification card. So when they're coming in to check in for the test, they present their ID and the deputy checks it, and then they're admitted to the exam. So that's been the practice that we've been doing and we will continue to do.
Okay.
Yeah. And if it were to be a virtual proctor, the company hires a proctor that would proctor it virtually, and there are a set of protocols that they would follow, that organization itself, in terms of identity verification. The proctor is going to be physically watching the person through another device, basically.
Okay.
So it's all very thorough.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other supervisor, any other supervisor, Chair Gashby?
Also on that, letter D, so we're proposing that we strike all of number 3 there. So will there be anything, or will it just say examinations and then move right on to letter E? In the municipal code, will there be anything written under examinations if we strike that?
Examinations would still be in there. There's going to be I don't have a whole,
There's a 1.
there's a 1 and a 2 for sure.
Yeah,
I don't know what those are off the top of my head.
okay. No, that's fine. I was just curious if something else was.
Yeah, I mean, basically, the one thing that kind of restricts us with how the civil service ordinance is written today is that this product is called out specifically in the ordinance, which restricts us to only using this product. So by removing this, it still allows us to issue or administer an exam. It still allows us to do the interviews. It's just, we are not committed to this exact product.
So it allows more flexibility or
Exactly.
more options, yeah. Thank you.
Any other committee members? Okay, so you asked very good questions. You 3, I really appreciate that you took up most of my time, but then you created other ones for me, which is a good thing. I'll start with Supervisor or Vice Chair Gashby's. How can we approve something when we don't know what language is going in there?
There's nothing replacing that language.
So there's not a 1 or a 2. I mean, there's not a.
There is a 1 or 2, it's just we are not making amendments to that 1 or 2. We're just striking the
So
number.
this isn't a finished product of
Correct.
anything. It's just showing that you're taking something out of this. But this is not a product of anything. I mean, if I went and looked up what this was, there would be a 1 and a 2 there, is what you're telling me.
Making any changes. Or
Correct.
changes in the meeting, right?
Okay. All right. See 1 or 2. Okay. The last thing, and I'm not gonna get into micromanaging which test is better or whether we should proctor them or anything like that. But my main question when we do something like this is why? Why? So the answer that I wrote down was efficiencies. Can you define that for me?
Sure. So right now, the testing company that we're using is based out of Chicago. They have part-time proctors that do this outside of their day jobs, and so their availability is limited. So when we have a group of candidates, we have to get as many as we possibly can, get consensus on dates, making sure that proctor is available to come up and drive 2 hours up here. And so we proctored an exam on Monday this week. We have 4 other applicants that can take another test, so I'm trying to coordinate another exam for the month of February, so it's logistically a scheduling kind of
That
disaster.
explains everything. I sat on the chair of joint services for years and tried to figure out how to streamline the system, and I get it. So the main efficiency is timing and cycling people through.
Yeah.
So we can get qualified applicants into the jobs.
And they
That
don't get-
explains it all. Thank you
Yep.
very much. Okay, now can we roll back up to the first one that nobody asked about yet? So explain that to me again.
Sure, so right now, the civil service ordinance only indicates the rules on how an applicant would be eligible to become a deputy sheriff. What it does not address, though, is say we have an employee who is separated with us for other reasons in another department or division. How the civil service ordinance is written today, it does not disqualify them. If they weren't eligible for reemployment with Kenosha County in general. Because of our hiring procedure, the civil service ordinance currently would not restrict them from reapplying and it would not disqualify
Alright.
them.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. Did we have a motion on this? I don't think we did, but my memory's not what it used to be.
I move approval.
Second.
Moved by Supervisor Kirsten, second by Vice Chair Gashke. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Here's the bills.
Out of the bills we got done. I do too. That was the last one, and there's only one line left. So what do we got? Administration?
You have a general fund report,
Okay,
or present that this evening.
Okay, everyone should have a copy of the report in front of them. I had one sent to them yesterday afternoon. So this report, the last time we met was 2 months ago. At that time, we reported $1 million expectation for a deficit that has in the last 2 months gotten worse based on some factors I'll talk through now. At the top, one thing that worked in our favor, Human Services is projecting a much higher operating surplus. This had to do with additional CCS revenue coming in. They were notified of that just within the last couple of weeks. And they had some surplus in their placements. The general fund investment interest revenue surplus that we had went down a little bit based on rates going down as it played out for the last few months. The treasurer's revenue went from a negative 50,000 to 100,000 gain. Our surplus having to do with, looks like the unrealized net gain that's reported through Dana. Looks like that's more likely that will be materialized. So we're showing that as a surplus. And then tax delinquencies, we had reported before a reduction of 200,000. It looks like it's trending more flat with last year. So it eliminates that 200,000. On the bottom section of the report for both sheriff's department expenditures and revenues have both deteriorated from 2 months ago. On the expense side, it's a continuation of an overtime deficit, much higher than the vacancy surplus that they had. Again, inmate medical services is over budget, including the prescription component of their budget. And then also variable costs like groceries is also much higher than the budget. On the revenue side, the U.S. Marshals revenue continues to be below budget, and the direct supervision having to do with probation, extended supervision revenue related to that is also looks like we will come in under budget. So between those two. On the sales tax revenue deficit, that's trending upwards. We have 2 more months left of the year. So we're running out of months for this to get turned around, but hopefully the last 2 months will improve this number. Little background on sales tax. So this, if we end the year at this level, it'll be 2 years now that we'll have sales tax revenue coming in flat year over year. Prior to that, the previous 10, 15 years, we were trending at a 5% increase each year. Last 2 years, we've been flat. I also receive reports of statewide counties, and all the other counties are trending either flat or negative.
what did we put in our budget?
So we put in, I don't know what the exact, we can look up, but from 20 22 to 23, we kept it the same. And from 23 to 24, we increased it 300,000, 20, also 20 million. And then for 25, we kept it the same as well. So the deficit isn't a result of us irresponsibly increasing our budget. We kept the budget basically flat for those 3 years. And unfortunately, because the revenues are coming in flat, it's still below budget.
What I was asking for is not because we can go back and fix anything in the past, how we budget in the future. So if we're putting something in our budget, that's an increase and we had 2 flats, that would be improper budgeting and then I'd really get angry. Okay, continue.
Yes, good question. Health insurance, we really had a poor fourth quarter, last 3-4 months. In the past, I reported that we knew that prescription component of the health insurance was very high and over budget, but we had a surplus in the claim side, which we're thinking would negate a good chunk of that. Unfortunately, the claims in the last quarter deteriorated and that actually, that surplus deteriorated. Looks like we're gonna be around budget, maybe a little bit more, but long story short, there's no surplus there to cover for this, for the deficit in prescription. So it looks like we're trending $1 million-ish currently. There's still some year-end journal entries that has to be done, make sure that things fall in the right year, but that's where we're trending on that. The only other one I'll talk on is the circuit court county clerk register of deeds revenue. So the ROD recording fees revenue certainly ended up end of the year in the red. We also, there's a component of circuit court revenue that has to do with investment revenue. That needs to be included as part of the general fund overall investment revenue to make sense. So that took that number down a little bit. And also child support revenue line item for circuit court as a result of the law change where the county cannot ask for support from parents.
Right.
That revenue line item as well. So overall, we're looking at a $1.7 million deficit, still in the 30% range, still a few more months to go. We still have actuarial estimates that have to come in. Like I said, year-end journal entries to work through. But at this point, this is what we're expecting for year-end. I mean, I'll take any questions.
Supervisor Gears.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I remember in the past, I know we have this $1.7 million we're projecting, and I know you mentioned that, we have some other estimates that have to come in, so it could get worse, it could get a little better, we'll see. But like when we went to the rating agencies, we were able to use an all funds approach. So for example, the surplus in the highway internal service fund sweeps back and forth, and so that fund is already folded into this. I think workers' comp, we have to keep a surplus there. We keep a cash surplus in workers' comp, if I remember.
That's correct.
Yeah, and do we also have to keep a reserve in our health insurance fund?
Currently, we have $1.5 million
Right.
reserve.
So we keep that surplus there. So we're able to take all of those surpluses and show a total fund approach as far as the ending balance. Now, but as far as what happened in the year, like we still have this really healthy fund balance.
Yes.
But I know Gabe and I are on the Brookside Fund, and we got reports that showed over 2 million surplus there. So that means if we net this against that, we have a surplus. And then golf course, I think, had a surplus. So when you add those together, we probably had over $1 million surplus when you look at the whole entity. So really, I know we're struggling with these items, but countywide, we did pretty good. So is there anything I'm missing in that or?
No, there's probably some other smaller pockets like that. If you'd like, at the end, we could do a similar analysis like that. To kind of show the overall picture.
That's wonderful that I'm just, and I'm not, I don't want to give you more work and I'm not saying you need to do that. I'm just saying when you go to the rating agencies or anyone else that's going to look at anything here, although we had this 1.7 million, when you add everything together, we had a surplus.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're looking at it entity-wide, we had a surplus. So that's, overall, we did really well. That when you look at the whole budget, we did really well. So, and I know I made that comment, but it's kind of a comment inside the question. I just want to see, do you think that's accurate? And I think you're saying, yeah, that is accurate. That's a fair way to look at it. So my question was answered, so I yield.
Thank you, Supervisor Kirsten. Did one of you two have your hands up down there? Supervisor Kirby.
So as far as the, sheriff operating revenue deficit, I know we prepared something, for the US Agents Program, or the Federal Agents Program, to kind of show how we came to what our cost was for that program. Do you still have that? Cause I'd kind of like to take a look at it. Just, anticipating if we're gonna see this trend next year, it'd be
Okay.
good to understand.
Our costs compared to what we,
Yeah, our cost compared to what we're seeing for revenue, because, it's not necessary, if we're seeing less cost associated with the program. And we're also seeing less revenue, it's not as bad as it looks.
sure.
Thank you.
Well, I'm glad Supervisors Kirsten and Kirby looked at the bright side and tried to make me feel better about this report. But I can't remember a hit like this. And recently, have we had one?
2009,
See, you're ready for me.
I was ready for it.
Yeah, see, this is disturbing. I mean, I understand as a county, we're doing well, but how this happened and the mechanics that I usually don't like to micromanage and don't, but when I see big numbers like this, I circled the only one that was good on the bottom. So, I mean, I don't know. Did we miss numbers? It doesn't sound like we're gonna get much coming in the last 2 months.
No, I'll tell you that what I did is I went back and researched going back to 2009. And the common theme is every year out of 5 or 6 different categories, you would always have a material surplus that would get us in the black. This year, we had none of those. We didn't have a huge influx in investment revenue. We did very well in investment revenue, but we budgeted for that. Sales tax, didn't have anything on sales tax. We were flat. We didn't have any TIDS closing, so we didn't have any one-time hit for revenue there. Health insurance or one of the other insurances, we did not have a material surplus in any of those. So everything that normally would help us get us to the black this year was in the negative or non-existent. And it's almost like a statistic anomaly that everything went wrong this year when it came to that. Even so, during that time period, from 2009 to the end of 2023, we increased our general fund from 6 million to 26 million. So we went from 10% to 32%. So I mean, we've done a great job of building that up to getting that where we want to be this year. It's one of those years where we're going to take a step back and that will happen, I guess.
Okay, I buy that. So what does that mean to us going forward in budgeting, or do we just hope we get one of those
Well, I can,
funds to help us at the end that we usually get? I mean, if we start trying to fix our budgeting and make sure we're budgeting the right numbers, maybe we don't have that big thing at the end and I mean, this doesn't become more of an anomaly. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay,
So I can speak to that. So many things that were done for the 2025 budget had this in mind, knowing this. Sales tax, we did not increase that. For the sheriff's department, we are made aware that they increased their rate that they're paying us by 50%. So that helps with that line item. Health insurance, we made some changes to the health insurance program and the prescription drug side of it, things to help us mitigate those deficits. So we knew those going into it, and that's why we did those things to help with the 2025 budget to try to eliminate. It would be irresponsible for us to not try to make sure that this doesn't happen for this year.
right, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot or saying we did anything wrong
No.
at all. I'm just, again, drawing a line in the sand and say we can't change the past. We are responsible for the future.
Right.
So, you know, that's where my questioning's coming from is, I mean, I'm gonna be here at a minimum of one more year, if not more, God willing. But, I just don't wanna make this more of the trend than what we had before. And I mean, one of the things I gotta tell you that's pretty troubling is looking at these numbers, the sheriff's about 1 million of this.
Yeah, that is the most material.
Yeah,
deficit.
I added it up, it's almost 1 million. So, you know, I mean, when I'm asking questions about overtime and how you're moving money around, well, obviously you're not having enough other things in the positive to shift money over to cover other things,
Right.
because we're not having that happen anymore.
Right.
So if we're budgeting closer to what's real, we have to make sure the sheriff's department does that too.
Right, yeah, and they're a microcosm of kind of the overall county. Not only that overtime was high, that's not new, but they also had the inmate medical and the prescription way much higher than normally, and these variable costs with inflation, the groceries and the variable costs, those all spiked on us too. So that was all kind of a perfect storm of making poor results on the expenditure budget side.
So going forward, I would assume that they're saying the same thing as you. We're gonna have to use real numbers and make sure that this doesn't continue to do this.
Actually, we took a much closer approach as a result of them having a fiscal manager. So we actually helped them to more closely develop their budget, and so that should help as well.
Okay. There's not much to say. This is alarming to me. So I just want to make sure that, you know, so the next time we're gonna see this is in 2 months when you get everything finalized, or
Next
3 months, next month?
We'll do
Every
it next month. We'll have another month of sales tax revenue, so
Yep.
we'll have you tie that in a little bit closer. Tying out some of these numbers, like he was talking about, the living on the IBNRs on the health insurance and workers' comp, so those may be in by that time or not, so that'll ramp these in a little bit closer.
Yeah, March, each month will get more clear. March will be pretty close to what it'll be.
And then we're done in April. right?
April is when we do the carryover closeout resolution. correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not screaming that the sky is falling. The county's in good financial shape. I'm not saying the sheriff's department is doing anything wrong, but I mean, as a fiscal steward for not only my district, but the county, this gives me goosebumps. So temporary goosebumps, but goosebumps. So we need to know where this is gonna go. We need to monitor this. And and I'm sure you're making the budgeting practices reflect the way this really is, but
Yeah, this is the first time since I've been having to work on this report that it's in the negative.
I think I was elected in 2009, so it's the first time I've had one of these
Yeah.
too, so it's very, okay. Any other questions, comments from the committee? Supervisor Kirby.
Sorry, I thought of one more question.
Sure.
So when we're looking at our sales tax revenue
You can
budget,
ask as many as you want.
Are we taking into account the fact that grocery costs have been so much higher? Because those aren't taxable.
They are and they aren't. So I was just having
Yeah.
a conversation with someone because it had to do with something else. And I said, people think groceries are not taxable, yet a component of our sales tax revenue is going to be coming from grocery stores because what is not taxable is like meat and bread. Yes, actual, but you buy potato chips and you buy soda and you buy baby formula and you buy diapers. All of that is subject to sales tax. So yes, we in Wisconsin benefit from the non-taxability of many of the grocery items, unlike those who live in Illinois. But at the same time, we do get some sales tax revenue from the grocery stores.
Do you think we're gonna keep seeing that trend where we have this lower sales tax revenue?
Crystal ball.
Yeah.
I know.
It is a head scratcher for this
Correct.
year for it to be flat, like you said.
Yeah.
It isn't, it isn't. So here's the things that don't make sense.
Yeah.
So there's inflation. So
Mhm.
people are cutting back on discretionary spending. It's sales tax, but they're cutting back on discretionary spending because it's costing them more money to buy the things they need, which then gives us more sales tax.
Mhm.
So are they buying cars? That is one of our hugest sectors of sales tax revenue. Maybe that's down. I haven't been able to analyze those
Okay.
figures yet. So if there's been this big disparaging in the sectors or subsectors, I don't know that yet. Once we get in our last 2 months, then we can start to look at that.
Okay.
So by closeout time, I can start to pull some of those numbers together. But the trends in the particular areas that make this up are difficult to follow.
Okay.
They're difficult and they're difficult.
It's a mixed bag.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were about 4 or 5 months into the year and we were trending flat. And the reports I was getting for statewide show that we are one of the few counties that were flat or negative. That was concerning to me, but since then, everyone else is caught up and in fact, a majority of them are in the negative, so we're actually better than most being in flat.
Thank you.
So it's not an anomaly, like a one-off.
Supervisor Kirsten.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I was here as the CFO, one of the things I did when I first came in was I developed a historical analysis of our fund balances. And at the time, we had they didn't have, we weren't audited by CPA firms. We were audited by a governmental entity named the Bureau of Municipal Audit. And then they changed the law and allowed CPA firms to do our audit. And then when the CPA firm did the audit, we that took off, and then the state ended up eliminating the Bureau of Municipal Audit, and the CPAs did our audit. So we flipped from BMA to Price Waterhouse, and then had different auditors over the years. And also generally accepted accounting principles changed over the decades. So the way we measure this changed. But I still had that spreadsheet and I was still keeping it up. Do you still keep that up? Do you still, I mean, I went back to the 40s or 50s with our fund balance.
I don't think we have history back that far,
No,
but we do have history back into the, at least, I want to say 40 years.
yeah. Update.
If you look, you probably can see that. The thing I want to say is we're dramatically more solid and will continue to be dramatically more solid than we were back then. I mean, there was a time when we were in the red. We were in the red. And there was a time where the finance team came and talked to me and were worried about, do we have cash flow to pay bills? So
Yeah.
I'm just saying, put it in perspective. I know we have to work on this, but this is so much more solid and we are so much more solid than we have been over the decades.
Yeah.
And I yield.
You could say that we're used to a straight A report card and we've got a B plus.
Well, compared to being worried about not having enough cash to pay your bills, we might have gone from A plus to A.
Yeah, I think we're at A minus, not in the Bs yet. If I get another one of these, we might be sinking down into the Bs. So, but we're still good. I'm not, believe me, my questioning is not geared at, something's drastically wrong. I mean, I believe in the budgeting practices that we use, and I believe in the financial stability of this county and that we're doing a good job. It's just, we are taxed with looking at numbers. So anyway, still, we're fine. Let's just stay on top of it. Any other questions, comments, anything from administration? Okay. Somebody gonna move to adjourn?
I do.
I mean, I can sit here all night.
I'll move to adjourn.
It's been moved by Supervisor Gearston, second by Supervisor Nudo to adjourn. All those in favor?
I
Aye.